Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 129. And this episode, we are going to be diving into the Godzilla franchise, which, if you've been listening to the show at all, we've never really mentioned before because Matt and I only know so much about it, but it is fascinating as all hell. All of the back and forth between regions, the games that have happened, what we haven't gotten, and how it crosses over into so many other forms of media. So we brought in some experts. And so we have the hosts of the Castle Bravo, a Godzilla-verse retrospective podcast, Derek Van Dyke and Charlotte Landale. Derek, Charlotte, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I am very excited to have you both on. I've known Derek and Charlotte for a long time through the SDGC community and have been talking with them since pretty much the inception of the idea of this podcast because I was just excited to know about it.
We've crossed over like many times in various podcasts.
Yes.
So
it happens.
And both of you have done incredible side quest episodes for us. As of when we're recording, Derek's third episode is about to air, and Charlotte's a spectacular Sonic Adventure episode. One of my favorite guilty pleasure games because, I don't know, as I get older, I start to think that both Sonic Adventure games, they're fine games, but they'll never be as great as I remember them when they first came out, but they are not on any level bad games.
No.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah.
If you couldn't.
I will also say I am sorry that you had to harangue me for like 6 months straight to get me finally in the headspace to work on this side quest. And once I really got moving and got over the hump, it was done in like 3 days. So
that's fine. I say this to anyone who works. Side Quest is a series that's at infinitum. It goes on forever, and so I'm happy to get episodes when I get them. And also, at 6 months, you are still not the longest I've ever waited for an episode, so you're fine.
True.
But I'll take the silver.
But we are here to talk about Godzilla, and I thought this was a really great thing to talk about because I found that, like, and we were talking about this before we started recording, everyone has the touch point of the NES game at one point or another, it feels like. Like, most people have seen it or played it, but, like, as we go through the franchise, Godzilla has had some strange appearances. And also, like, the inconsistency in which this franchise has its genres is ridiculous because I feel like every other franchise, for the most part, sticks to a similar format and then will break out. Like, just using a broad example, Mario is mostly 2D platformers for a long time, then breaks out into RPGs, 3D platformers, all sorts of stuff, and then sports games and party games, whatever. But, like, Godzilla, I don't think any two games have been in the same genre except for, like, the Destroy All Monsters stuff. And that's really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of reminds me of some other, like, megalithic, like, Japanese licensed IP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When they, like, if you look at the history of, like, Dragon Ball games or Gundam games, you do see that genre hopping. You see everything from fighters and arena fighters to weird platformers to
card battlers.
Exactly. And none of it makes any sense. And the quality is all over the place. And we get some games and not others. And I think that that's kind of the lens through which I look at Godzilla, is very much like stuff like Dragon Ball or Gundam.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think let's go around first to start talk about our earliest touch point with Godzilla games, because I feel like it's going to be wildly different in a similar way that people's touch point Godzilla movies are often wildly different too.
Yeah.
And so I'll go first. I mean, like most folks, I had a Blockbuster near me and a Hollywood Video, which was like the bootleg version of Blockbuster here, at least in New York. And I, of course, rented the NES Godzilla game because I had seen a couple of Godzilla films as a kid, and mostly like, oh, cool, the big things are fighting, you know, like we all engage with it. And then I rented it. And like I got home with this NES game and went, I don't understand how do I play this? And like I suffered through it for a while and then ended up returning it. And I've since gone back and played it. But like, God, that early experience with that first Godzilla game, Monster of Monsters, is just, it was so weird. I don't understand how that came to even be.
It's a beat 'em up board game.
Yeah. Who goes, we're going to start with a board game map screen that takes you through weird side scroller levels and ends on repeatable kind of low input, like fighting game style boss fights. Nobody sits down and thinks that that's good game design, but it sure got produced, and it's the one everyone played.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the NES era titles, there was so much of a, like, explosion of evolution of what is game design and what make good game.
Yeah.
And in my head, Monster of Monsters, which is definitely my touchstone for Godzilla games, it's somewhere between Rampage and the Fantastic Four game for PS1 with the random 1v1 fights with just a little bit of we need to make it complicated for some reason.
Yeah.
Just that.
So if we're talking touchstone as in kind of our first real introduction to Godzilla in video games, for me, it would be Super Godzilla on the Super Nintendo, which Stormy, I believe you saw me stream. It's a very weird game. So once again, there's this weird thing where not only does Godzilla come in multiple genres, but some of the games are multiple genres in and of themselves. Because Super Godzilla is this weird grid-based, top-down, like time trial race to the monster type of game, and then when you get to the monster to fight it, it goes into this weird side by side, not exactly a fighting game, almost closer to a rhythm game. Of course. Once again, no combination of genres that should be put together.
Second only to his breath is his incredible rhythm, are Godzilla's greatest abilities.
Everyone knows Godzilla can boogie the fuck down.
Hell yeah.
But
and that's the game where you always see the images that are like, destroy the economic center, Godzilla, make the people happy.
Yeah.
That's what it's from?
That's what that's from.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. You've solved a mystery.
Super Godzilla for the Super Nintendo. Now, I do believe that's photoshopped. I don't think that's actually in the game.
Well, no, that's not what it says in the game.
Yeah, but it's great.
I mean,
but yeah, so that would be, I remember going over to a buddy's house and he had that. And I was a huge Godzilla fan because I'd watched pretty much every Godzilla movie that was feasible for me to have seen by, early middle school, which was still at the point of like 11 or 12 different Godzilla movies, which is a lot for that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to play this. And I did. And it wasn't good, but it was what I could get. So
that's real.
So I went back and I've played older games since, but my first Godzilla video game was actually just Destroy All Monsters Melee for the GameCube.
Nice.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. The first truly good. I don't want to be like spoilerific, but I'm pretty sure that's the first truly good Godzilla game.
Yeah,
I would agree. Yeah,
At
I
least
think the
that we
Pipeworks
had
games
access
are.
to.
Right,
There's too many games. I looked at the Wikipedia list of Godzilla video games, and it was just like so long, so many different systems. Like a solid 2/3 of them have never come out of Japan. So I was just like,
Half of those are on like Japanese PCs.
Right.
I expected Monster of Monsters to be like, okay, no, like Godzilla is a very like great history and a very long-lived franchise. And so, yeah, of course, it'd be some early attempts at things like that. Monster of Monsters would be like, I don't know, 3rd or 4th game. I think it was 12th.
Yeah.
They just cranked them out like MSX, SharpX, all of the... They were just weird PC games, so no wonder we didn't get them.
To be fair, cranking them out is very in the spirit of Godzilla, to be honest with you. Those movies were coming out at a rate of 1 a year for most of the franchise's history.
So they were doing it right.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of my impressions about Godzilla, my early impressions about Godzilla from those games.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when Derek and I were talking about like Mogira, I was like, hey, why doesn't Mogira make the noise? Because Mogira says its name in Unleashed, but it doesn't. Right.
If Pokemon speaks?
It kind of does in the Pipeworks fighting games, yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't make any noise in the movies, so they were just like, it's got to do something. What'll it do? Like,
that is the obvious first answer, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Pipeworks games like are undoubtedly some of the best Godzilla games, and especially that first one that Charlotte mentioned, Destroy All Monsters Melee. Like, I had that game too on the GameCube, and like the combos and especially the grapple moves in that game were so ridiculous. There's a monster who I can't remember the name of, but I'm sure Derek will know that. Its grapple move it had a buzzsaw on its stomach, and
it's Gigan.
Gigan would just like buzzsaw you and then throw you, and I was like, what is happening?
I think you described it pretty well. That's exactly what's happening.
But like that game was just so wild and so much fun. It was the big dumb fun that like early Smash Brothers was. Not that the later ones aren't, but like the earlier Smash Brothers games were like, let's throw these things at each other and see what happens.
Early days of the GameCube having Super Smash Brothers Melee and Destroy All Monsters Melee. First off, a lot of melees in the early days of the GameCube. But also, if you had a group of buddies come over on like a Saturday afternoon to play some GameCube, you had some good 4-player options for some fantastic bullshit.
Yeah. But that game also specifically, I think what makes it so great is they kind of just let you like mess around and have fun, like even the early King of Monsters games. And so like what I really love is like I, as a kid, loved Anguirus for no reason other than he was a spiky turtle.
Well, he's the underdog.
Right. But, like, I don't even know I'd seen the movie at the time. I just had a toy of him, and then by the time I got to the GameCube era when I could actually play as him, I'm like, that's it. He's the best. Like, he's the best character, even though there's no reason. Also, I have gone back and since watched Anguirus' movie, and, like, it's just a guy crawling on all fours in a turtle suit.
Not good. It's not good.
But like I love
like the suit is so badly constructed in that movie that you can literally see the broken seam running down the back of the shell as it's kind of partially open.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's Godzilla Raids Again's not a very good movie. It's the second episode of Castle Bravo, and you could hear me and Charlotte go from the incredible heights of the first Godzilla to Godzilla Raids Again and going, ugh, you can tell this is the only movie for a while not directed by the original director.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that game really celebrates what we love about these characters, right? It's just goofy, over the top, big action, big destruction.
Dudes in suits whipping the shit out of each other.
Hell yeah.
I also have the attempt, and if I remember correctly, like, they were modeled after the guys in suits. Like, they didn't
incredibly
like,
so.
It wasn't fantastical. They didn't like over imagine these characters like they've done in other games. It's literally models of the guys in suits, and it's like just ridiculous.
There are definitely some Godzilla games that take a little liberty with design. I remember specifically there's a GBA really, really bad Godzilla kind of arena fighter, but it's on the GBA, so you can tell how that goes.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, it made Sonic Battle look like a polished gem.
Oh man!
But yeah, you know, you get bright neon green Godzilla with the big goofy, you know. But most of these games, even dating back to like the NES, are relatively good at sticking to the imagery and designs of these monsters and not playing them too cartoony within the limitations of the system, right? You can only do so much on the NES.
Right.
Yeah, and even then, like Monster of Monsters, they went pretty decent as far as like giving it a sense of gruesome detail and not going chibi.
Yeah. Like Godzilla was proportioned like a dude in a suit and not like a little, like not chibi, like you said.
Yeah, which is often where those things can kind of go. And I think of franchises like Godzilla, and it makes me think of stuff like Super Robot Wars. And like you mentioned before, like Gundam, those ones where it's monolithic and it can go in any one direction. And yeah, there's always some chibi games. They happen. It's just, whether they make it to America or not, that's a rarer thing, but they happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of like feeling around to determine how they could best like make you feel like Godzilla or to how you were going to interface with Godzilla, because a lot of the super early games were just like you controlling the military and trying to stop Godzilla, and then eventually they realized I don't want to stop Godzilla. I want to be Godzilla.
Yeah,
there are no consequences in this digital world. How many cities can I destroy? Vengeance for nature.
It's funny that y'all also mentioned the chibi characters, because there's a game that I don't think ever made it to the US, but I found out. So we've all done our own separate amount of research on previous games because it's impossible to have played all of them in the States. But apparently there was a Mega Man soccer-esque battle soccer game that not only had Godzilla in it in chibi form, but like Ultraman, Gundam, Kamen Rider, just a ridiculous grouping of monsters, and it was literally a soccer game with chibi monsters running around a field.
Oh, they made a baseball game of it too.
Oh my god.
The battle soccer and battle baseball.
Charlotte introduced me to both of these a half hour before the podcast, and
that's when I found out about.
I consider it a personal failing that I, of all people, did not know about the Godzilla Gundam Ultraman Kamen Rider crossover game, even if it is a soccer game. I should have known about that, and I would like to apologize to the American people first and foremost.
That's the honorable course to take, and thank you. The nation forgives you.
But like I also like Godzilla has done that a bunch, right? Like appeared in other things and other properties, has been had cameos in games. He's apparently in the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde game.
The NES one?
Which I didn't know, but
well,
it's
why
listed,
not at this point?
right? It's like
Godzilla's so monolithic that it's something that you can just reference and parody and spoof and satire as much as you want, really.
Mhm.
And I mean, especially if you start getting away from what are intentionally like, this is Godzilla cameoing in this thing, and this is a game that has a thing that riffs off of Godzilla.
Mhm.
Once you broach into that second category, I mean,
Right.
that's too much.
Like, yeah, what are the aspects of Godzilla that you're referencing in it? Is it just a big lizard? Okay, well, yeah, that's easy enough to make a lawyer-friendly cameo wherever the hell you want.
Yeah. If you've got a big lizard with back spikes stomping through a city, that's a Godzilla, baby. That's a Godzilla, baby.
That's a Godzilla.
Yeah. It counts.
It does. I mean, like, isn't Godzilla a costume in Fall Guys?
yes, I believe they did that.
I love that.
crossover.
I didn't know
That
that. I
wouldn't
love
surprise
that.
I found that out in my research and looking up Godzilla video games. They list Fall Guys. I'm like, wait, how is that? Oh, it's just a DLC. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's on
But
Wikipedia.
excellent. I love that. That's perfect. Totally love that for Fall Guys.
Right. I think the thing that shocks me is the fact that if they're going to list that on Wikipedia, there's so many other like costumed appearances or cameos or things where surely Godzilla has shown up. That's the one you're giving us? Is that just the one you got? I don't know. Like, there's got to be so many more, and I just don't know it. And neither does Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally possible. I mean, this is a character who I feel like has the ubiquity of a Mickey Mouse on some level because it's a character that everyone knows, right? And it's very easy to understand. I mean, my favorite thing is like, at least, I don't know if this is at all movie theaters, but there's a movie theater that I go to that uses like a Godzilla animation as like a pre-screening, like don't talk in the theaters thing, and it's all stop motion and like I don't know if it runs in other theaters.
I love
but it's
local
great.
theater like pre-screening animations.
It's so good.
Twitter got obsessed with bowling alley animations for a while.
Yes.
And I want that same level of energy for movie theater. You know, please turn off your cell phones before the show. Weird animations that are in everyone's local theaters.
I think we're due for that. I mean,
Yeah.
bowling alley animations are a certain kind of contextless unhinged. Utterly and completely. And I think now as things settle and as the Dadaism slides away, we find ourselves with a core of, yes, pre-screening announcements.
Yeah.
You know, we'll rediscover the Muppets musical one, and then it gets deeper.
I remember
Exactly.
that one.
Don't forget to watch the movie. Don't forget to watch the show. Yeah. Not a week goes by that I don't hum Don't Surf to myself.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, like with the Godzilla franchise, I wonder why we haven't seen A, more stuff in the States, and B, more stuff recently. I know that the last like major release that got like the most publicity was the Godzilla game on PlayStation 3/PlayStation 4 at the very end of the PlayStation 3's life
just
cycle.
Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it
also
wasn't good.
it was bad
Probably
and
haven't gotten
like
more.
Yeah.
kind of just disappeared because it was so close to that transitional cycle that no one really
It's
like,
great to look at screenshots of,
yeah.
and then you actually pick it up and play it, and you're like, ah, I see. This is why.
This is why I haven't heard of it. I mean, but that's like a question that I would like to pose to this panel. Like, why do you think Godzilla struggles so much? In a similar way that Batman for many years struggled to have a decent video game, Godzilla seems to ebb and flow with that.
So I can tell you one thing that is a major factor in this, which is Toho is very protective of Godzilla these days. Ever since the 1998 movie in particular, the company has been extremely protective of licensing Godzilla out to anything. So if you look, this like flood of Godzilla video games and Godzilla appearing in things goes up through the 90s and then stops after the TriStar Godzilla, which I still think is a fine movie. You know, it's just not a great Godzilla movie and not really Godzilla at all. but a fine creature flick. But because of the reception to that, Toho has become so protective. That's why it took so long for anybody to get a chance at doing another movie with the 2014 Legendary Godzilla.
Right.
Toho themselves takes long breaks. Godzilla comes and goes in phases, right? Godzilla first hit the screen in 54 and was a cultural phenomenon all the way up through the mid 70s. And then they put him on ice for like a decade and there was nothing. And then brought him back with a vengeance in 84, went up through the mid 90s. And then they intentionally wanted to put him on ice for another 10, 15 years. Brought him back in 2000 as a result of the poor reception to the American TriStar Godzilla, and did another couple year spat of games and then went on ice again. And it's really not until recently that Toho has kind of opened up more, and it's mostly because of relatively positive reception to the Legendary movies. The Pipeworks games trilogy is the primary exception to that rule. I don't know what it is. Somebody at Atari fought hard to get Destroy All Monsters Melee made. And I used to talk to Simon Strange, one of the lead designers on the game. He used to be real active with like fan forums and stuff. And from his explanations, Toho was basically up their ass every day, every single day about that's not what it would look like if Godzilla stomped. Like every tiny Godzilla wouldn't do that. You know, Gigan wouldn't do that. They were so strict about those characters. And it's basically only because of their good relationship with Toho and their willingness to follow orders that they got the chance to do 2 more of those. So Now, why have there not been any bigger games in recent years? That's a good question. There's been a lot of mobile games.
Yeah, many mobile games.
But I mean, a bunch of cheap gotcha mobile games is not really what people are asking for. So,
but it's a lot. It's what a lot of franchises have been giving us across media.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is some difficulty in like, what would you do with a new Godzilla other than just make a follow up to the Pipeworks games, which Unleashed on the Wii was released unfinished, unfortunately, and definitely shows and could use a successor. But I'm not creative enough to think of how you would make a Godzilla game a meaningful AAA type of experience.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is like I was saying in the beginning, they were trying to figure out like, what do we do with Godzilla in this space? How do we make it a Godzilla game? And I mean, eventually they did realize people want to be Godzilla, but after that, then it has to feel like Godzilla. And then it can't just feel like Godzilla. It has to be a fun game too. So, I mean, like Pipeworks did that super well, but I think it's kind of a balancing act between what Toho wants, making a fun game, and making it a Godzilla game.
It's kind of the same problem we run into with Godzilla movies, right? Because you release a Godzilla movie, and what happens is everybody who is kind of into Godzilla goes, okay, but why don't you just cut all the people out and make it 90 minutes of Godzilla fighting dudes? And you can't do that because that's not a movie.
No.
You would get bored after 20 minutes because there's nothing to it.
And that's not the heart of Godzilla
movies. Are not about Godzilla. Yeah.
And good Godzilla movies have decent human sections too, but like people think they want one thing, but then that may not be the best thing to give them. Yeah. So like it may be that fans' demands are not the best thing to listen to. So in a funny way, maybe what this franchise needs is to go back to that you're playing as the military and fending off monsters kind of angle.
Maybe.
Yeah. There was that City Shrouded in Shadow, which is a spinoff of Disaster Report. And it's you play as a person on the ground level during one of various licensed, you know, there's Ultraman fighting a monster, there's Evangelion, there's Godzilla attacking the city, and you're just trying to like survive and escape during the monster attack. And that's a really compelling idea. But if you tried to sell people a Godzilla video game where it's like, no, you don't play as Godzilla, you just try not to die, they'd be like, that's dumb, I want to be Godzilla.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, well, first of all, I do want to point out that it has been 20 years since Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee came out.
Oh, don't say that.
So
don't say that out loud.
So like they have remastered games that have been out for less time. like The Last of Us. And so I feel like we could, like, I don't know who would make it. I would love for Atari to make it, but like, or Pipeworks. I don't even know if Pipeworks is still around.
Pipeworks, I don't think is still around.
I guess it's a matter of who holds the copyright right now.
Yeah, well, because what happened to Atari? Because Atari has been through the ringer. And of course, like, nobody owns the rights to Godzilla in gaming space. They're licensed out individually. So, but who owns the rights to that specific game? Or Save the Earth, its successor, that is mostly just the same game with more content.
Yeah.
You know, is it that? Or do you just license out the license to somebody and say, hey, make like a fourth one of these?
Yeah.
But like, because it doesn't matter because we own Godzilla, you know?
Well, and there are game developers who've gotten good at like making version, you know, I mean, famously you think about KOTOR, right? And how it went from BioWare to Bethesda, but the game mechanically is the same game.
Yeah.
And like, so like it's possible and doable, but I don't know that. Also, I don't know if I was on a development team, how excited I'd be. Here's that license you wanted, but now do that thing that someone else did, but better. It's like, well, no. I want to do my own thing. And so that's probably part of it as well. But like I feel like the reason those games worked is because they really made you feel like you were the monster and like they leaned into the BS. But you make good points when talking about the movies. Like, I think the reason the 2014 series, the Legendary series, works, and albeit I haven't watched them all, I just watched King of the Monsters recently, but like they work because the human characters are compelling and the stories are compelling. Do they always work? No. Is it always good? Like King of the Monsters, I think dragged a bit, but like I also hear that even though I haven't watched Kong vs. Godzilla yet, the reason that's good is because it's big, dumb fun and it's two giant monsters punching each other. And so like,
but they still put some emotion into it.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a balance to it. And I think the creating the plot for these games are more complicated than we'd like to admit, but I think it's absolutely doable. Honestly, I'd like to see someone go back to like Monster of Monsters and make something a little weird and like just give imagine a 3D animated side-scrolling beat 'em up as Godzilla or something, right? Like,
I mean,
and I think that actually kind of hits to the heart of
Streets of Rage, but Godzilla.
Oh, it'd be so good. Come on now.
That could be good, yeah.
Cityscapes of Rage.
Yes.
I want this.
Too good of an idea.
That is too good of an idea. Look, all I know is that Tribute must listen to this show. We interviewed them a while back. Like, obviously they're listening. No, they're not. But they have kicked ass with the new Ninja Turtles game. So they should just do that next. Just reach out to Toho. I'm sure. Can't be that hard, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that's not too many needles to thread. But no, this is something of the difficulty of, I think, with Godzilla as a property, in that normally when you would license out like a big movie franchise or something like that, it's because it's a moneymaker, because it draws people in. But does Godzilla necessarily draw people in, certainly in the West? And depending upon what the games are, and I think some of the best ideas are not going to be AAA titles. They are going to be indie titles. Like, you could get some really cool indie space stuff where you're going to explore different gameplay ideas for Godzilla, whether as Godzilla or as part of the military. Yeah, modern console and PC technology has reached the point where you can have a great deal of moving parts of people. So if you want to have like an RTS that is dealing with not just Godzilla, but all of the other monsters, and you want to have, I don't know, an alignment system going on. If you do things that are either for technology or for nature or for people or for, whom you're backing and resurrecting, almost treating them like weird elder gods. I'm thinking of like Eternal Darkness. Who do you follow? And then who, if you follow Shaturga, then Xelatat's going to get your ass kind of thing. And... or it's the other way around, but it's been a while. But any of those, like that's probably the closest you could get on like a top level idea. So you could have sort of that open world design. I'm thinking very much of what we were talking about last episode, Matt, because you have those like for the large studios, and I feel like a larger studio is going to be the one that's going to be like, hey, let's make a Godzilla game. We can have the communication with Toho and make that happen. Whereas I would love a smaller studio to, I don't know, could you imagine like a visual novel representation of the first few Godzilla movies? Like, I would really enjoy the hell out of that.
Like navigating the dialogue and like the politics.
Navigating the dialogue, having like little more than a visual novel, a little less than a Telltale game, but like exploring the narrative of why these kaiju come to be and why they are here and what they want. and having that evolution happen. The notion of Godzilla was only a force of nature until, I'm going to get all of the names wrong, and
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Jidan, like the three-headed guy, and shows up. It's like, oh, well, then that's something to fight. And these things shift and happen, which is why I'm also thinking of like factions and things. And those are probably where that could go. But
Yeah.
Derek, what you told me about how Pipeworks was working with the parent company on this, could you imagine getting all the moving parts
Oh, it's probably a nightmare.
right on that?
I do think they're more flexible these days than they used to be, but you know, I mean, who knows?
I mean, you could go with MonsterVerse on
Yeah.
this, like pure MonsterVerse, and go with the Legendary Pictures thing, and then have kind of that sort of build, and then like, oh my God, we might have a licensed game.
Why
Jesus.
did my brain just go to Total War Godzilla Defense Force? Charlotte, is that anything? You're the Total War fan.
It could be.
Does that work? I've never played a Total War game. That's just what my brain
I mean,
did.
it could be made to work. I mean, if you had like a Total War game that also had like if you had an early warning system that Godzilla's about to show up or something, or because like in the Warhammer Total War games, there's like basically a disaster meter at the top.
Mhm.
It's more specific than that, but basically like you have a certain amount of time to get ready before the apocalypse comes. So you could do something like that, but with Godzilla.
Yeah, like phase 1, phase 2, prepare, and then they're here, and what's up?
Yeah. So, you know, even like a building and defense kind of format. It's hard because the obvious direction that everyone in YouTube comment sections or whatever will say, everyone on game FAQs is going to say is, hey, what about a game where I just play as Godzilla and destroy all the cities? And it's like, that is the video game equivalent of why don't we just make a movie where it's just Godzilla and he fights all the monsters? Like, it
All right.
wouldn't work.
It wouldn't, but hear
All
me
right,
out.
hit me.
Let's lean into some modern trends.
All right.
Let's have some asymmetrical play.
Ooh,
Let's have a 1v100.
I think
where you got to
just
build
said
your
some
defenses,
words.
and one person gets to play as Godzilla, and they have to try to destroy it. And it's a lobby thing, and you don't get to choose to be Godzilla. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're making the defenses.
I
I think that's my favorite so far.
like that.
Honestly,
I like that.
Yeah.
I would hate it, but I think it has legs.
Well, it depends on how you do the SDF angle, right? Like,
That's true.
Is it where different people will control different squads, you know, like RTS style? Is everyone in an individual tank and jet or whatever? You know, but like, there's potentially something compelling there. But
Right,
that's how
yeah.
you change that up, right? So that you're not turning on the game and just constantly playing as Godzilla and walking through a city and making everything break. That's a tech demo. That's not a game.
Right. I mean, I
Right.
played through Rampage on the NES. I beat it. I got to the credits, but because I was 5 and didn't have anything else to do, not because it was a compelling game.
I'm deeply fond of Rampage 2 Universal Tour on the N64 and PlayStation 1. If you go back to
That's
it, it's not really a game that can hold you. But,
No.
you know, when you were in middle school and you and a couple buddies got together with some controllers and played, it was a great time, but it's different now.
That's fair. Yeah. A lot of my Rampage time was playing with my brother, and we'd create narratives for the people that we were
Yeah.
killing and eating.
You just start beating each other up. you
Oh,
know,
God. Oh,
Stop
goodness,
killing
yes.
me.
Yeah, I was the younger brother, so I still am a younger brother.
Yeah. That stopped due to a horrible time dilation accident.
You play enough Rampage, you see the credits. Weird shit happens, okay? I am changed. But yeah, it was mostly just like, telling my brother to stop hitting me.
Yeah.
But at least in the game.
experience aged me, literally.
Haha. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think also part of it is like Jeff and I have recently talked about how there are just dramatically less licensed games.
There
Like,
are.
just think about the Xbox 360 era, which got some of my favorite licensed games that we will never see again. I mean, I talk about Wolverine Origins whenever I can because it's the worst movie, but one of the best Wolverine games we ever got. And it's literally nowhere except on PS3 and Xbox 360. So you can't play it unless you have those consoles. And like, I think about with Godzilla, like in that age, that's when we got a lot of these beat 'em up games or the monster fighting games.
The PS2, GameCube, Xbox era was like, a golden age of often pretty decent licensed titles.
Yeah, that like they weren't the best game ever, but they were rare. Like some of them were absolutely unplayable. I often think of the Thor game on,
Ooh, yeah.
on the Xbox 360. That was just, and I just, it was so bad. Like I can't even pretend it was good.
But think about like the Lord of the Rings games on
Oh,
PS2, right?
They had
Return
no
of the
business
King
being
was
that
so good.
It's,
I
The
want.
SpongeBob games were like decent. What is this about? Like,
I mean,
Yeah.
most of the
And
licensed
so-
shovelware, I think, went to the DS.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. But like I think about now, like there's just so much less of it because people think more carefully about the licenses, which is great because we get better quality games. But it also means a game like Hulk Ultimate Destruction or the Green Lantern movie game that was actually somewhat decent. Like we're not going to get those because they're way more protective of those properties. It allowed us to get stuff like Arkham Asylum, which I don't think would have been made in a less picky era. But like it's keeping us from getting, I think, more stuff. And because I really do think that the 2014 Godzilla game that kind of just disappeared and wasn't well made is why we haven't seen anything since, because
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
nobody wants to, like, people are afraid to touch something like that because, look, the reason I always like indie games and we promote indie games more than AAA stuff, because whether you like AAA stuff or not, the bottom line for most of those large companies is the dollars. It make dollars. And like Godzilla just hasn't, since Destroy All Monsters in that era, has seen to print money. Like, that version, that PS3/PS4 game bombed. And so I think people are afraid to touch it. But I love Jeff's idea. I think if Toho made it more accessible for indie developers to reach out, like, follow me on this journey a little bit. And I'm curious, Derek, if you and Charlotte are ever going to cover this. But I genuinely loved as a kid the Godzilla cartoon. I know it's like death for most people. Nobody likes Godzuki, but I was dumb enough that I loved that cartoon. It is not a good cartoon.
Hanna-Barbera had a stranglehold on our childhoods. That's just how it works.
But like, imagine an RPG where you could like do battles as the people and have weapons, and then like maybe Godzuki is in your party, and then like fighting the boss battles where you summon Godzilla. Like, as an indie RPG, that could be fun, really dopey, and it would have to have a good sense of humor about itself, but like really fun. And I think about those kinds of ideas more than like, I would love a Destroy All Monsters Melee repackaged, radioactive edition, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
but
now with more monsters.
Why not?
Like,
There's
yeah.
a lot of monsters. Like video games go so deep on lore. Like learning about Godzilla and learning about so many of the monsters and things. This was one of those moments of, is this what I do to people when I talk about video game lore? And yeah, it's true. It absolutely is. And you know what? I learn about so much lore and things through playing the games and through everything else. So yeah, throw everyone in there. Screw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, because Save the Earth added a bunch of extra monsters, and then Unleashed added even more, even if it was unfinished. Like, how about we just pick up the framework from where Unleashed was and like make a finished game out of it and add a little more?
Yeah.
Like, there's room there. I think it's interesting because you bring up the fact that Godzilla's not a moneymaker in terms of lighting the world on fire. Even the Legendary movies, the ones that people like, are doing okay, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing like Marvel level or even half of Marvel level. It is maybe closer. But the other side of it is people don't tend to get into gaming and game design to make licensed games, right? And I think that's part of it too, is it really takes an IP that a studio or a group of people is deeply, deeply attached to for that to happen. That, or you're a content house like Warner Brothers that owns a bunch of IP, and you're going to put studios you own to work on things that you own to reinforce brand image. But that's not a thing for something like Godzilla. Toho's not involved in video games. Nobody in the West owns any kind of publishing rights, so there's no need for that. And if you're an indie, you're going to make your stuff. You're probably not going to want to make Godzilla. So it has to be this like perfect storm of some team, whether it's mid-level, double A level, like we want to make something mean and lean, $40 punches above its weight class, or some studio at a gigantic publisher that just really badly wants to do it. But like you said, it's going to be hard to convince, an EA or a Ubisoft or an Embracer Group to let you take a shot at Godzilla when it's not a moneymaker. So
Yeah. I mean, look, I think our Godzilla beat 'em up has legs because all I know is that we did get Streets of Rage, Double Dragon Neon, this Mutant Ninja Turtles game, like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. These are all properties that existed already that companies that didn't originate them took on these characters. And so, like, I would like to think that there's a world out there where someone's like, I want to make a Godzilla game. If only I had the rights.
the consistent thing that keeps Godzilla exciting for a lot of people, the thing people go back to frequently, is often less the plot and more the imagery and the ever-expanding ridiculous roster of monsters, because Godzilla monsters rule. I think the big draw for any game you go for is going to be either play as the big roster of monsters or do something to the big roster of monsters.
Yeah.
You know,
Agreed.
it's that or you focus almost solely on Godzilla as some kind of mythic icon of destruction. And the way fandom goes these days, it's gonna go towards the thing that leads people down 18 Wikipedia entries. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we live in an age where we have Wikipedia in our pocket most of the time. So I am enjoying that there are games that come out and media things that happen that have enough of a, well, who's that? You can easily figure that out. And someone has already, the game just came out. Someone already has made a wiki where they explain all the references.
yeah, there's already a TV tropes page, right?
Yeah.
Like on day
I
one.
love it for that. And I do think that there is great passion for Godzilla and for those monsters. And yeah, I feel like a lot of indie studios would just make their own basically Fire Pro Wrestling version of Godzilla. You know, it's not actually Godzilla. As we were talking about before, you just change a couple of things. It's not Mothra. What are you talking about? It's, Butterfall and or whatever it is. And so, yeah, trying to find the studio that's going to be behind it and finding what the soul of the gameplay is, I guess. Because, I mean, yeah, it feels like there's fewer licensed games, and there probably is. But I also think about Spider-Man, which is a game that we are very documented on the show as being avid fans of. And, I mean, yeah, I know Marvel's been hot for a long time, but a game that, from the word go, you were just overjoyed to have the feeling of being Spider-Man. And whatever the direction of the game, whether it is you really feel like you were in the middle of an emergency of something horrible emerging from the ocean and terrorizing the city, or fuck it, you're Godzilla and I feel incredible. You are getting button prompts to do all of your attacks, all of your different things. You get to smash these things. The tanks are coming. Oh, there's a concussive force to your breath. And if you get enough combo points to push all the tanks back or whatever it is, like, it's possible for people to capture a feel that feels good.
Yeah.
And Godzilla's existed for a very long time, so Spider-Man. And you don't have to get every detail right. I mean, I could be wrong there, but I feel like if you get the feel right, get a couple of beats, and yeah, you have that balance of a little bit of story and a little bit of everything else. But you're right, someone's got to take the chance.
People tend to be forgiving when you capture the spirit,
Yes.
right? You know, it can be a little messy as long as you've got the spirit down and you make something that's basically compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've done a ton of retrospectives on this show. I think the reason Godzilla is so interesting and it's so hard to hone in on specific game details is just the limit of access to the games that we've had in the States, but also there are the key points that stand out within this franchise. But again, I think maybe the reason some of these games have been a little all over the place, a little schizophrenic, is because it is hard to pinpoint that energy that is uniquely Godzilla. I mean, think about, like, look, Super Godzilla and Godzilla Monster of Monsters are wacky, weird-ass games. But do you feel like you're playing a Godzilla game? Somehow, yes, right? Because it's trying to tell you, all of them are trying to tell you some kind of arc or narrative.
They capture that very, like, classic camp sci-fi, pulpy, I guess I'd say pulp sci-fi kind of feel of like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could you imagine a game now where they get incredible mocap of people actually being the monsters in suits right now?
That would be awesome.
And you play up the
That- my
campiness
heart.
of it all?
My heart. I do need to check out. There's two, and these have both been kind of on my watch list. But within the last couple of months, there's been two not Godzilla but Kaiju games that I've got my eye on that are indie. There's Dawn of the Monsters,
Oh, that's right.
which is kind of a beat 'em up basically, and then there's Giga Bash, which is like an arena brawler fighter type game. And both are very clearly inspired by that like genre of, that Godzilla, Ultraman, that kind of tokusatsu, kaiju style.
Mhm.
And there's definitely a lot of room to experience the feeling through that. Because like everybody also played, what was that on the PS2? War of the Monsters? Everybody
Yeah.
played
yeah.
War of
I
the
played War of the
Monsters, it
Monsters.
feels like.
Yeah.
And it's not a Godzilla game, but if you bring up if you say all the, talk about Godzilla games, there's always somebody who's like, man, it wasn't Godzilla, but I played War of the Monsters, and that's what a Godzilla game should have been like. And, they didn't play the actual Pipeworks Godzilla games, but that just shows you how much this project that showed that much love to its inspiration can still capture that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Godzilla as a franchise is something that I'd be excited to see more of. I just find it hard to believe that the video game industry is done with Godzilla.
Can't be.
Besides mobile games to have been coming out. Like, it's just not possible.
They're not done with anything.
Yeah. But I also don't want another, whatever the bad Godzilla brawler was. Was it Unleashed? The bad one?
Unleashed was bad, but
The
it's Unleashed was just unfinished. Like literally unfinished,
yeah.
the poor thing. So
And like, I imagine also like for me as like a nerd, like I love different costume variants. Like the fact that Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee had like the 2000 Godzilla, the classic Godzilla, and
some
like
of these monsters have been through so many different designs. Yeah, like give me costumes. Give me like goofy Cookie Monster looking 1970s Godzilla.
Oh, like the Son of Godzilla era kind of stuff.
Yeah. If I want to be Mecha Godzilla, the Mecha Godzillas are kind of distinct, but like Rodan's had several looks. You can, there's so much to mine.
Yeah. And in the modern video game landscape, if that's what it takes, it's like, you can monetize that. Sure, fine.
If it gets me a good Godzilla game, fine.
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. Well, I think what I've learned looking into this is like, there's a ton of like games that I didn't know exist that now I want to see if I can get a fan translation of and play.
I've played so few Godzilla games. I need to play so many of these.
Check out the TurboGrafx 16. Had a Godzilla fighting game that was decent.
All
And
right.
it's like a 2D side by side, like traditional fighting game. It's not bad.
I do want to thank you and Charlotte for joining us. Can the two of you tell us a little bit about, before we wrap, your Godzilla retrospective podcast, Castle Bravo, and like what we can expect from season 2? You're currently on hiatus, but you're going to be coming back for season 2 soon. So like pitch the show and talk a little bit about what we can expect in the new season.
Yeah, so this really started as an excuse to watch the Godzilla movies again with my sister. And what was interesting is I was looking at these movies and I was learning about the original creator and director, Ishiro Honda. Honda's a fascinating man. He was a religious man, came from a family who was in service to a local Buddhist temple, drafted against his will into World War II, ended up working at one of the comfort women camps I think it was in China that he had to work. It might have been Korea, but in mainland Asia. So he saw some atrocities. He was made to film war propaganda at one point in his career. It's hard for me to find the like specific timing on when that occurred, but he eventually comes back home to Japan, is in Japan when the atomic bombs drop on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he ends up dedicating himself to film, becomes friends with Akira Kurosawa, best friends with Akira Kurosawa, and made some really interesting, very political, very weirdly, I hesitate to call them leftist because I don't think you can map Japanese politics of the time onto like a 2020 something Americans concept of left versus right. But these are movies that consistently told stories about overcoming the pride of your nation and coming together as people of the world and working together as people of the world is very like humanist. And, whenever somebody does something bad, it's not because they're from a bad country or a bad culture. It's a human failing. That's a failing that exists in all of us. Versus whenever somebody is virtuous or righteous, that's the best of all of us that we all have inside. It's a very kind of Buddhist view of humanity expressed through these movies. So it ended up stopping being just, we're going to watch these movies and having fun. And season 1 really turned into this view of Honda's politics and where they came out through these movies and the formation of Godzilla as a franchise from a single one-off horror movie to the monolith that it became. Season 2 is going to be a little more interesting because we're going to cover everything from where we left off in the early 60s up through Godzilla going into hibernation in the mid 70s with Ishiro Honda's last film he ever directed. So I suppose, and I can't say because we haven't gotten into it yet, that season 2 might focus more on the Godzilla growing beyond Honda as other directors begin to take the helm and experiment with his creation, and he eventually retires for good and goes, this is up to the rest of y'all now. But we'll see. And we're hoping to start before the end of summer. It's just life's been hard. Yeah. I know I said so much, Charlotte. I really should give it over to you.
It's fine.
I'm the talkative one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm a lot better if I like prepare first. So that's why I'm usually the person that has all the notes about the movie and like go from there. But Derek is the one with way more experience prior to this, especially compared to me, because like I said, like most of my preconceived notions of Godzilla and the other monsters came from the video games that I played. And I mean, I did watch some shows. I do know who Godzuki is.
Hell yeah.
But so, you know, this is a lot of these movies are like the first time I've watched them. So I'm learning a lot while we do this. And, you know, Godzilla is just like this cultural cornerstone in Japan, and just, you know, learning a lot about culture in that way. And there's a lot of themes about like nature versus technology and like trying to coexist with the planet and that sort of thing on top of the humanist themes. And it's just Honda put so much of this into his work. So now we get to watch these movies about giant monsters punching each other in the face while also discussing like issues that are still prevalent today.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we're concerned about the planet today, and they were concerned about the planet back then and what nuclear power meant and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Mothra's a movie about a giant monster, but it's also a movie about colonialism and the exploitation of foreign and deemed exotic women. So like very explicitly.
Yeah.
And the true enemy in that one especially is capitalism. So
yeah.
And then we just spent the last hour talking about wanting video games that they all just fight each other.
Hey, I can't. I'm stuck living in this system, right? I can't do much about it.
I know. I'm not saying either side is more correct than another. This is just a funny thing to observe, I think.
But the original Buddhist creator might be rolling his eyes from his grave a little bit.
That's fair.
So.
Yeah. And I will say, as a avid listener of season 1, I really enjoyed the moments when Charlotte would come to a realization about a greater theme, and Derek, who's loved these movies forever, would go, holy shit, what the fuck? And like, it didn't happen every episode, but when it happened, it was really great. And also I love that both of you are really open to the idea that you actually don't know these movies as well as you think. And as you dissect it, learn things about them, and even in the research, discover more. I think it's very easy, like the mass audience, to go monster hit monster good, which is all just as fun. But like, I think the reason that, like, for example, when y'all came on Screen Snark and we talked about Shin Godzilla so much, it's because that movie is fucked up. And yet it's a brilliant Godzilla flick in a different way. And I think the fascinating thing about Castle Bravo and how you've explored these movies and will continue to, I hope, is that you really just want to learn. Like, you want to enjoy these things and learn about why they happened and what the hell they're about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta hope that continues to happen, because especially when we get to the episode on Shin Godzilla, like, first off, that's the episode everyone wants us to get to, right? Shin Godzilla
of course.
is
one of the most
extremely
popular
popular. It is popular even among people who don't give a shit about Godzilla, and I'm going to have some bad things to say as things currently stand.
Yeah, we're going to have to shut down after that episode, I think.
I'm gonna get attacked outside. Someone's going to throw a shoe at me. But maybe I will learn the error of my ways before then. Maybe I will see things on a third viewing that I didn't see before. I don't know. You know, gotta be open to it. And part of the retrospective is getting things in the context of the time that they released, which is a big part of it. I've seen a bunch of these movies. I haven't seen their original Japanese, like, widescreen cuts, you know, untouched by American edits. I haven't seen them while trying to think critically about them and more than just a monster fight in a long time. 'Cause a lot of these I haven't seen since I was a kid. So, you know, gotta be open-minded.
Well, thank you again for joining us. This was an absolute blast.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
When there's an inevitable future Godzilla game that we're inevitably going to get, we'll have to have you back.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, why don't you tell folks where they can find yourselves, if you wish to be found, as well as Castle Bravo and anything else you'd like to promote?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Derby City Derek.
And I am on Twitter at Viscerocomplex. I'm going to have to spell it VISCEROCOMPLEX.
Like Viscera Complex, but it's Viscera.
Viscero. It means a
Yes.
thing without a brain that lives anyway.
Shit, that's me.
So say we all.
Yeah. And
Yeah, right.
you can find the show itself at Castle Bravo Pod. And as Matt mentioned, I'm also a co-host and editor for Super Deluxe Games Cast of some very, very small amount of internet infamy. And you could find that on Twitch and Twitter at official SDGC.
Twitch and Twitter just sounds like such an old, it's like a line in a witch's rhyme.
Oh, I love that. It does have a certain
Yes.
sing-songiness
Twitch
to it,
and
doesn't
Twitter
it?
can be found.
Oh, I love that you pointed that out to me.
Again, thank you both for being here. Please check out their episodes of Side Quests as well. Also, a bunch of the folks over both past and present of SDGC have done episodes for Side Quests as well, and those are all great as well. I could recite them all because I actually remember them, but I won't. I won't do that to everyone here. And thank you, of course, for listening. Jeff and I love talking retrospectives. We've done a bunch. We plan to do more. Do you have a favorite Godzilla game? I mean, that's the most broad question we can ask. Have you ever played a Godzilla video game? Also an important question to ask. Please let us know. Again, the conversation about this stuff is why we do this. And I learned so much just by Googling a ton of shit. I can't wait to actually get my hands on some of these games in a total legal and absolutely respectable fashion.
Absolutely. And listeners, if you too have started Googling Godzilla games because of this podcast, because of this episode, which one are you most shocked exists? Which one do you really wish had come to America? What do you want in the most pie in the sky Godzilla collection that could just totally happen tomorrow? Totally. That's how these things work. But what gets you playing Godzilla games or not? What would you want to see in a future Godzilla game? We spitball a lot of ideas here, and we'd love to hear some of yours. And there's a lot of ways you could reach out to us about that. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at funandgamespod. You can email us funandgamespod@gmail.com. You can let us know what you thought of this episode, what retrospectives you'd like to see us do in the future, what guests you'd love to have appear on here for us to chat with. You can also go to certainpov.com and check out not only this show, Side Quests, other fantastic nerdy podcasts, but also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server as well and continue chatting about all this there.
Yeah, if you have a favorite monster, please let us know and tell me why it's Anguirus, the spiky turtle, because he's
Hey.
the best.
Not to interrupt the outro, but how did I go this entire podcast and not bring up the idea of a Godzilla Muso?
Oh my God, yeah. How did you not? That's your bread and butter.
They've been making some good musos, though.
I know. I was sitting here doing the with the whole time holding that back, but I was like, no, I really need to throw that one out before we go because that's too on brand.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah, but
Anyway,
see,
continue.
but would a Godzilla Muso be Godzilla versus a bunch of soldiers?
No, you
or
gotta pick your Godzilla monster and beat up a bunch of nameless.
monster
Yeah,
minions.
sure.
Oh, yeah, it's monster.
Robots.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some Hollow Earth fights. I don't know.
If you want a Godzilla Muso, please come to our Discord server and tell us all about it.
Yes.
As Jeff said, certainpov.com. We have a ton of really great podcasts over there. I already mentioned Screen Snark, which everyone on this podcast has been on as a guest and I host. There are a ton of other really cool shows as well. Please join us in conversation. You can also rate and review this podcast on a multitude of platforms. We always ask about Apple Podcasts because it helps us get featured, but really anywhere that they let you give a star rating, please give us one. It helps. It helps when folks find the show and helps us grow this incredible audience who listen and we discuss with, because this is a community and we want to make it bigger and bring more people in.
And if
Get 5 even.
yeah, right.
Right, exactly.
If this episode has taught us anything, it's that those sort of ratings and those sort of optics matter in where things go. So we love being able to hear from all of you. We love being able to share these wild and silly and big and small things because this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't screen beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
Writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry.
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? But that's not
Can I call them screen beans now?
fine.
Screen beans. Ah.
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all screen beans now.
She will be mine.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.